Hey guys, please leave us a review, hopefully 5 stars, and it'll really help us keep growing and getting more guests on the podcast, and we'll continue delivering amazing content for you. Thanks. This might be a trickier question for you.
In Australia alone, we're looking at 250% growth in the last year in terms of overall bookings into Pilates.
Regardless of where F45 are as a brand in Australia or where they are in their life cycle, I always am so thankful that they happened. They set everyone up for success, right?
85% of our users tell us they care about how they feel more than how they look. Getting carried away with fit outs and expensive equipment and change rooms and all these different accoutrements at the expense of the actual experience is, I think, oftentimes what separates the best from the worst boutique operators.
Hey guys, for the very first episode of Sweat vs Equity, we were lucky enough to have Sam Canavan, the Managing Director of ClassPass APAC. He's a very intelligent, articulate guy, and ClassPass are blowing up globally. So this is a great episode to listen to. It's going to give you a handy snapshot of the fitness industry and tell you exactly what's up and coming, some trends, and really key success factors of good operators. Hope you enjoy it, guys. Sam Canavan. Episode 1, Sweat vs Equity. No pressure, mate.
All good, mate. Happy to kick this off.
How are you?
Very well, thank you. We'll talk like we're in a pub. No beers, unfortunately. It's a little bit too early on a Friday morning, but really looking forward to it.
It is. It's only hit 10 a.m. now. Mate, we met at the Fitness and Wellness Expo.
We did.
We jumped on a keynote together. What was it? It was customer experience we're talking about. Mate, I remember... I think you took one of the first questions, and I was like thinking to myself, holy shit, I'm going to have to up my game here. Like, who is this articulate, good-looking guy?
Go on.
What did we talk about? We spoke about Mecca a fair bit.
Mecca Cosmetica. Yep.
We spoke about the fitness industry as a whole.
Yep.
But yeah, mate, and then we, for context, I wasn't with ClassPass at the time, or Strong wasn't with ClassPass.
And to be clear, let's be honest, you were quite intractable in your anti-ClassPass views.
Yes, and I can probably say this openly now, but I was very anti-ClassPass. I remember 5 years ago I did a post on it on my Instagram saying how it's bad for the boutique fitness industry. Mate, I was one of those people that, I was right against it. And you hear these scenarios where, your biggest critic becomes your biggest advocate. And I think now, I can't believe it's happened to me, but I am on board. Effectively, what we've got now, 22 studios on ClassPass or going to ClassPass. Mate, how did you do it?
Mate, for me, it was a scenario where I knew you had this intransigent anti-ClassPass view. And I knew that we'd actually never at ClassPass had a chance to have a chat to you, meet you in person. And I could tell, I'd followed you, I could see you're a smart guy, you're a rational guy, you're a pragmatic guy. So I just thought if I can have a chat to Ramsey on this panel, if I can show him that I actually know what I'm talking about, let's just meet in person and see if I can prove to him that the product has come along in leaps and bounds. Because I knew you as a business owner, we know we never do anything right the first time, right? Strong views, loosely held, and we sort of do the best we can with what we know. When we know better, we do better. I know you had that ClassPass 1.0 experience, which we talk about openly. Fritz, our CEO, says that was not good for the industry. It was $100 a month unlimited, and the whole pitch was half these people coming in are getting convert direct, and everyone's happy. It's almost like a pure lead gen tool. The reality was it didn't happen. People are going 3 times a day. The studios were getting paid out pennies on the dollar, and the whole, it worked for the users, wonderful. It didn't work for ClassPass because our user base shot up to the right, and our cash on the books dwindled hugely because we had to pay out these studios. And the studios are saying, very few people are converting and this doesn't work. And it was 2018 we changed the model, and you hadn't really looked at ClassPass too much since then, where we had this credits model. So we said, this is broken. We don't want to have a commission model. You've seen a lot of those where you come in, you're on a Vanity or similar, hey, I'm going to get my hair done, but I'm clipping the ticket for 20%. What are you going to do as an operator? You're going to say, hey, Sam, just come with me direct next time. I'll give you the 20 or the 25%. You can build the relationship, the lifetime value is higher. Or look at booking.com, same thing. You now see that this is a serious trend. Book with me direct in the hotel. I've got a loyalty program because they're clipping the ticket. So he said, we need a genuinely sustainable model, and that's why credits was built. So it is an internal currency. You pay a certain amount per month, you get your currency, and people pay with credits. It's like their monopoly money. They can use it anywhere in the world, no foreign exchange fees, no issues. And the best thing as well, we thought we need to make this technologically forward-facing, because the industry, as you know, especially 5 years ago, there wasn't much interesting technology. So we built the algorithms, which use machine learning to surge those credit prices up and down based on your demand and supply trade-off. Very similar to Uber. You're getting a cab on New Year's Day at 1 a.m. from the city, it's surging up 3x. Analogous to an 8 a.m. class on a Saturday morning at Strong. Either I can't get in because it's full with your direct members, great, or I have to pay probably the same thing as I would drop in, $30, $35. Inverse is true, off-peak time, 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, we drop the credit price down. And everyone just said, that makes so much sense. You're weaponizing technology, you're protecting my direct spots because there's the algorithm that runs in the background protecting the spots. Because again, I know it's going to be very hard for me to justify if you say, hey, Sam, I've got a member who's been here for 6 months, couldn't get into class today because someone from ClassPass had dropped in. So it protects the spots direct and surges the prices up and down. So that was the only thing I wanted to convey to you, because I knew you're a smart guy and you would go, that makes a ton of sense. This is different to what I imagined. And I remember getting the app out as well and just showing, I remember you going, that has come along in leaps and bounds. And so I knew I just needed to have that time in person, because it's very easy, as we know, and you're in the business of sales as well. It's very easy to let written correspondence go through the keeper. I saw some written correspondence you had on LinkedIn with somebody. Mate, there's correspondence you had in late 2021 with one of my team where you said, hi, yeah, you said, hi, yep, really good, thanks for reaching out. Just to manage your expectations, under no circumstances will any Strong location work with ClassPass. It's there in writing. And I just want to say that I admire the fact that after we had that chance to sit down, I explained to you, and I put my hand up as well. I think that's also, I will never stop saying this, because I think it is humbling for us and quite endearing for us to be able to say, we did get it wrong initially, and we've changed. And you would have to be a pretty unreasonable person to say, I'm going to tether you to what you were doing 5 years ago. Imagine that personally, right? You're in bad relationships, right? And then you've changed, genuinely changed. We developed, change is the only constant. No man sets foot in the same river twice, all that stuff. So in every other context we're changing, we're the same as a business. Your business changes all the time, and it has to keep changing. So I thought that if I just said to you, this is 2.0, this is 3.0, this is now genuinely wonderful for the entire industry, you would be open to listening.
Yeah, mate, I certainly had to swallow my pride from some extent.
But again, this is why you're great. Because, strong views loosely held, that's a Chris Sacca line. And having the intellectual humility to know that you can't be fixed in a view you might have had years ago because of this constant flux and change, especially in this industry. Think about how many opportunities you'd missed if you said, I'm going to operate like it's 2018. Right? Constantly developing. So, mate, that I would have had very little respect for you if you didn't swallow your pride. You said, I don't care what you're saying, I just don't want to hear about it.
Yep.
You were open.
Mate, so 2018 is sort of when it all flipped.
Yes.
I'm actually, we can go into how sort of well ClassPass has performed for Strong, because it has been a bit of a game changer. But mate, I'm interested to hear about you. When did you come into this role? So Managing Director, APAC, ClassPass. I mean, what's the background? I heard on the grapevine you've got some military background. Is that correct?
It is correct. Yeah, I actually joined the army straight out of school with my identical twin brother. We joined the army, much to my parents' chagrin. I rocked up to the army, no joke, with blonde dreadlocks. He rocked up with a huge flowing mullet. And the first thing they did, of course, is shave our heads. But the thing we didn't realise is in the army, the last thing you want to be is somebody who sticks their head up. Because what happens, it doesn't matter whether you were a CEO in a former life, in civilian life, as they call it, or whether you were a middle manager, or whether you're working in, it doesn't matter, whatever the industry was, everyone has to get beaten down and level set so that you're all part of the same team. You want to be what they call a grey man in the army, which is you're not exceptional, you're not terrible, you're just kind of in the middle. That's perfect. And so for us, coming in as number one, we were just turned 18, so we were the youngest recruits. We had these audacious, ostentatious haircuts, and we were identical twins. And then day two, the fitness test was the 2.4K time trial. We're both runners. And we came in and we were ranked 1 and 2 in all 3 combined platoons and won by about 300 metres, just us 2 metres apart. We actually broke the platoon record. Idiots. what were we doing? We should have been a bit more calculated about it. So that was the army experience from day one. In the army with my twin, got out. I was actually, I guess, had designs on being a relatively good football player. Was absolutely nowhere near good enough to play AFL, but loved the sport. And I thought, what is the best thing to do when you love footy, but you're not good enough to play? How can you get close to the clubs? How can you inject that personality and that subject matter expertise? So it was journalism for me. So I went and studied journalism and then worked at the AFL, worked at the Brisbane Lions, and was in media, comms, did TV, did radio, did a lot of print, wrote some very terrible stories over the years as well. And then, mate, to be really honest, to the point about sort of strong views loosely held, I was a good journalist. I loved it. I'm a curious person. I really thought I can make a serious fist of this. I wanted to be whoever it is, the next Today Show host. And I remember looking at an ad for journalism roles, all of Australia. There were something like 300 roles in the whole of Australia. Most of them regional, most of them didn't pay very much. I looked at marketing communications. There were 18,000 roles. And you've got CMOs, you've got CEOs who come from marketing backgrounds. It's such a wonderful skill set. And that was when, in my early 20s, I went, I need to read the tea leaves here. Journalism ultimately is a decaying industry to some extent. This isn't the halcyon days of print and advertising fueled traditional media. You can get paid really well and have jobs galore. We could see media dollars are diminishing, people are laying off staff, newsrooms are shrinking. And as much as that was a dream of mine, I'm I guess proud, similar to your point around just having this view and then changing your mind and being rational about it with ClassPass and Strong. That was my view very early in my 20s. That's when I got out, went to work in agencies and went to work basically as a generalist. The inflection point in my career, and I'm forever grateful for this, was 2015. I was working in an agency. I was working on Toyota's sports sponsorship, which is really, really cool. So activating the AFL and the cricket, wonderful. There was a sport tech startup based out of Paris that was running in Australia, and it was called Sport Heroes. The tech they built was really cool. They were the only company in the world that plugged into all of your GPS activity trackers. Not just Strava with an open API, they hacked into the back of Nike, they were in Garmin, and they created like frequent flyer points for activity, which is really cool, and gamified it. So Rams, you go and run, it would pull through automatically on your Strava, you get a certain amount of points, and then it would unlock rewards. So you've got 1,000 points because you run your 20Ks, have 50% off Nike, or have 75% off your City to Surf entry. We ran challenges to give away prizes, and the play was essentially an advertising platform. It's like a media channel. So we'd sell into Nike, say we're going to engage, get 10,000 people running 10Ks today, give them a chance to win 10 of the new Nike Reacts and then get a discount as well if they rack up enough points. Cool concept. And they were doing really well in Paris. They built the Tour de France official app. They built the Paris Marathon app, a lot of white label custom experiences. And I'm just so fortunate. I saw it advertised, and the guy who was running in Australia was French. And he was a former consultant, and he was incredibly buttoned up analytically and operationally. And he was strong in the financial side of the business, the general management, but he didn't understand the nuances of Australia necessarily. He wasn't the world's best communicator. He wasn't the best marketer in the world. And I'm just so fortunate. He said, I need a country manager. He was going to oversee the whole operation APAC, but your skill set is actually, fortunately, what I need. So, yin and yang there. He could be operations, he could be financial, he could be the P&L manager, and I could be the marketing, the sales, the comms. And I had this 1 year period under him where then I learned the operational side. I learned how to be a business generalist. I got this sort of MBA crash course because he was a consultant, an incredibly smart guy. So I had my own P&L. I learned business strategy. I learned how to write memos properly. I learned how to think about operationalizing and rollout. And I could then educate him a little bit on, okay, this is how I think about creativity and marketing strategy and the demand side of the business, as well as the sales. I've always been able to sell, mostly I think because I'm very passionate and people like that. And so then he moved back to Paris and I got to take on the whole business, which is wonderful. We were eventually acquired by Decathlon, which is the biggest sporting retailer in France. And then ClassPass, the long-winded, very discursive answer, but I think the context is helpful. I guess the takeout there is you don't have to go to business school and skills are transferable, right? My journalism skills, it means I'm curious, which I think is arguably the overarching macro business skill that is maybe most helpful that they don't teach you in business school. And obviously communication and figuring out how to frame things in a certain way, both written and verbally. But it was a guy I'd met at Splendour in the Grass Music Festival 2010.
Really?
It was 2018. Great guy. I'd seen him 3 times in 8 years, and he hit me up on Facebook. And he was the UAE, so United Arab Emirates, based in Dubai at the time, the country manager at ClassPass. ClassPass had just raised its Series D, which was $85 million US. And I'd been on ClassPass years earlier and sort of was using it here and there. Didn't really know what was happening with the company. They were mostly in America. I knew they were in the UK and a little bit in Australia. And he said, mate, we've just raised this Series D and this is for global expansion. We need to go fast.
What year was this?
2018.
Yeah.
We raised mid-2018.
Yeah.
He sent me a Facebook message and he said, I think you have a good profile. And the rest is history. Went, interviewed, wonderful. My first week was launching New Zealand, literally first week, fly to Auckland, launch this new country. My second week, ClassPass acquired our competitor in Asia called GuavaPass. So they're operating in, I think, 7 or 8 Asian markets. We acquired them, and then we had to integrate the GuavaPass business. This is really tough. You might think integration of business is hard at the best of times, but we were head-to-head. So we went into Singapore competitively, and we were battling. So they already had this footprint, and we were trying to say to the studio partners, join ClassPass, we're better, we're this and that. We had this obscenely generous offer. You could get 2 months free ClassPass and 200 credits, which costs us, you can do the back of envelope maths, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of dollars per user. And it was competitive. So I guess the analog here might be you play for Manchester City versus Manchester United, you hate each other, right? One of the biggest rivalries in world sport. ClassPass is Man United and they're Man City. And one day the Man United coach walks in and says, you're all now playing for us. Man City is disbanded as a team and you're going to have to drink the Kool-Aid and love Man United now. And the kicker is not all of you are going to have spots on the team because we couldn't take all of their business. So that was kind of underpinning the context, right? You go into war against another company, you're then acquired by them, you then have to integrate the team. And understandably, it got to kind of 3, 4, 5 months down the track, and we didn't have an MD sitting in APAC because I was just running Australia and New Zealand, and that was when it became obvious, Sam, you need to get to Singapore, you need to take on the whole portfolio, which is 10 countries between Australia and New Zealand and wider APAC, and make this work. And incredible experience. Still to this day, we've got, I think, about 10 Guava passes left between China and Singapore, who now are happy to play for the competitive team. And that was what happened. So it's big journey. It's
a very cool story, and sort of seeing you go from that, call it tech, fitness, wellness space to then across the ClassPass. Yep. So 2018, it sort of all kicked off. And how's the growth been since then? I know I don't really want to mention COVID, but we will. It's obviously been a challenging time, but yep. I'd imagine that the growth has been pretty incredible from that point till now.
Astronomical.
Yep.
Astronomical. I mean, Asia for us, and I think we can say this, and we've said this publicly before, is inarguably, I think, our biggest kind of regional success story in terms of expansion. So we're now in 30 countries around the world, all over Latin America, all over Europe and the Middle East, and then Asia Pacific. But we only historically had Australia as a market. We launched Australia in about 2015. That's when you would have, from F45 days, had some sort of ClassPass relationship. But Asia for us, it is our most profitable region. The region just keeps growing. In fact, a market like Singapore is now more than double what we thought the total addressable market would deliver us in terms of subscriber base and revenue. And it just keeps growing. Malaysia as well. I talked to a lot of people about Malaysia. They say, oh, how's KL, thinking it might be sort of second tier. Kuala Lumpur for us is about our 13th or 14th biggest city in the world, right? And that's up against an LA, a New York, a London. And it just keeps growing. And so you've got, there's a couple of factors here. Like broadly Asia, as you know, the fitness IQ, as I call it, the sort of the fitness literacy is increasing, right? Every single year. And in Australia, I'd say arguably we have some of the highest fitness literacy in the world. You think about a Sydney or Melbourne, LA, sure, New York, sure, and London, but penetration of gym memberships in Australia is right up there with similar to the US. It's almost 20. So that's been a wind at our back as well, that it's media, it's government campaigns, it's just a general awareness, which wasn't necessarily there. That's growing year on year on year because it's not as deeply baked into some Asian cultures, whereas we have grown up with it as well, organised sport, professional sport, and they're now realising that this can be the elixir, right? This can be the one-stop solution for you. You should be exercising, right? You should be moving your body every single day, and that has been a tailwind for us as well.
It's definitely really good signs to see the fitness industry expanding. I feel like now it's not, do you have a gym membership? It's where do you train?
Yep.
And I think the question sort of changed. I think the nice thing about having you on the podcast is, I kind of like to think of you as the data guy. Well, mate, you know the market back to front. You've got a good hold on Asia. It's really just nice to hear that it's moving forward and it's growing, and it just shows so much opportunity. And the thing I like about data is it's refutable, right? Like people can jump on a podcast and they can talk about their own brand or the sector that they're in, and they can talk it up. But at the end of the day, whatever the data says is in black and white, and that is the reality of the market. Mm-hmm. So I guess I wouldn't mind starting by sort of seeing, based off ClassPass data, what genres are killing it in the fitness space now. What's just going crazy, and maybe what's not doing so well, because I know quite often there can be, I've seen things come into the fitness industry and leave within 12 months, 24 months.
Yep.
So mate, what's happening at the moment?
So obviously we have a slight vested interest in this space around Pilates, and that is the one that I would call out, top of mind. Reformer and Megaformer Pilates in the last few years in Asia. In Australia alone, we're looking at 250% growth in the last year in terms of overall bookings into Pilates. Even if you think about the footprint of Pilates studios, doubled, tripled, some huge Pilates brands coming down. We've had Club Pilates come down. You've got KX Strong expanding incredibly quickly. The list goes on and on and on. Absolute U in Asia. And Reformer is the one that is at the moment outstripping everything. And it's interesting, I think Reformer is still, again, we're in the industry, maybe we've internalized this notion that Reformer is something that a lot of people know. But if you think about it, compared to the 20 or 30 years of your general like Les Mills style group fitness classes, you've got barbells, you've got dumbbells, you generally know the gym, and then by extension, it's not such a leap to think about the concept of a HIIT workout or a circuit workout. Oh, weights, that seems familiar. Oh, there might be some kettlebells there. Fine, F45 success, testament to that. But I think we forget that the Reformer as a machine, as a piece of apparatus, is a little bit of an arcane concept. And I even remember, I have to think back, 2018, when I started at ClassPass, I'd never been on a Reformer. And I was in my late 20s, never been on a Reformer. It wasn't really on my radar. And the perception for me of Reformer was this is almost exclusively rehabilitative. This is a physio, and or to be really candid, my perception was this is for older, primarily women, was sort of, my mum's friends or my mother, that seemed to be who was using Reformer. And the exciting thing there, you think about that, potential addressable market to go after for Reformer, that is why it's growing in my eyes, is that the sort of snowball effect of more and more people being exposed to it because there's more pins on the map, there's more brands expanding into Reformer, there's more awareness about Reformer, there's more better instruction online even, like what is Reformer, how does this thing actually work? And again, you sort of got this overall tailwind around Reformer, which is, and especially the guys' side as well, Reformer traditionally, the data we see, between 2 and 5% of all Reformer bookings are men. So you are leaving, as a genre, half of your addressable market potentially on the table. But again, I know Strong, it is a little bit more. And again, it's just getting men in there as well. The perception is incredibly different from the reality. And I'm sure you've seen that time and time and time again. The amount of my mates who have said, just come to a Reformer class. They go, oh, this machine looks weird, or it's not going to be hard enough. Is also something that comes up a lot, or I don't need this, or I do yoga already. And 99 out of 100, they walk out of there incredibly effusive about the experience. So I think Reformers had the tailwind of, number one, more awareness about it. Number two, more pins on the map, more supply. Number three, just the sort of snowball or like the network effect of more and more people being exposed to it, telling people, PR as well. We've got a lot of celebrities who love their Reformer. So that has been, incredibly exciting for us. It's actually the single biggest genre in Asia in terms of bookings, certainly bookings per venue index to the overall size of the footprint.
That was going to be my next question. So yeah. I guess a 250% growth is based off how many studios are opening and coming into the market. Would that be correct?
Yes, but index to it's sort of like per location.
Yep.
Right, so you have 1,000 yoga studios and only 50 Reformer studios, but per location, the Reformer studios are banking more reservations. We'd index it and take into account the absolute volume of studios.
And I guess you having access to ClassPass and now, MindBody as well,
yep.
You can actually segment this data a little bit more effectively. It's the thing I don't really love about a lot of the market research out there is they do put Pilates and yoga in one category. And it is very, very different. But yeah.
Even mat and reformer, arguably.
Yep.
Right? To be able to split out reformer, even megaformer versus reformer. So we try and cleave it out as much as we can. We understand that there are nuances between all of these genres, but completely agree that the historical data around reformer has been a bit muddy. Again, there's something as well with the ClassPass partnership. You, I know, saw the value in the data from the start. You went, I could pay McKinsey for this. They might sing me $200,000, but they actually don't have access to the proprietary data. Us now, MindBody ownership, they've got 50,000 studios there and 23 years worth of data they can mine. We've got 10 years worth and 40,000 studios on the platform. How on earth are you getting that otherwise? That's another wonderful thing about the ClassPass partnership. You say, okay, I would really love to dig into this. Even, we've done this many times across the world, is your scenario exactly where you've got expansion plans. You have sort of got this aggregated data around the potential addressable market here, the demographic, the age, the spending power, all of that. Relatively easy to get. I might have some aggregated data from one or two of the booking platforms, but you're missing a huge piece of the pie. So something that we do at ClassPass, and I would love to do more, and we'll certainly do it with you, is you say, well, I'm thinking about these few suburbs. This is sort of some anecdata, right? Some qual, some quant. I want to potentially drop my pin here, here, or here. And we can say, okay, we'll give you our data. We'll give you the rails run on this, to use horse racing parlance. And we can tell you, okay, so we have this suburb here is where you should go. Why? Because we can get under the hood for you and say, well, the demand is outstripping the supply here, number one. Or we could say there are less competitors here. Or we could say there are a lot of competitors and still they're at 90% utilization. So you get this sort of rising tide lifting all boats effect. So
you can literally say there is so many people training in this area that you have to open a studio here.
Yes. Drop your pin here.
What are the types of data aside from where people are training? I mean, what else do you look at to understand consumer behaviour?
Where to open for potential partners, or just general consumer behaviour?
Just in general.
So lots. I mean. Something we talk about a lot at ClassPass, and again, I'm surprised by how few fitness brands have internalized this. If you can have this sort of North Star like a credo where all of your strategy can ladder up to a sentence or two to try and underpin your consumer growth, you should. So for us, it is, we know from a consumer growth perspective, if you take 2 classes at 2 different venues in your first 28 days, and at least one of them is taken with a friend, because you can invite friends on ClassPass, very seamless experience, your LTV with us is stratospheric. Markedly higher than somebody who only goes to one venue or who doesn't go with a friend. And so this is similar to Facebook when they were growing, scaling infinitely 10, 15 years ago. And they were trying all these different things, incredibly smart people there. They realized that they could cleave the vast majority of their growth. They could break it all down. And do you know what it was? It was 7 friends in 10 days. That was it. It wasn't the channel you acquired via. It wasn't whether you had exposure to a certain piece of messaging that they'd given you. It wasn't whether you're on mobile or web. Nothing. It was 7 friends in 10 days. There is this inflection point and you're downhill skiing. So that's something that if there's one thing that people can take away from this, is like, think about this. What is your credo? What is the data point? So what does 2 visits in 28 days with a friend, think about how pervasive that is in every part of your business strategy. The demand side, the supply side, the product side, the analysis. So 2 in 28 days, you've got to think about the product. How do we make inviting a friend as intuitive as possible? How do we build recommendations engines through ClassPass to get you from not just strong, but also going to barriers? How do we make the onboarding as seamless as possible to get you to class as quickly as possible? That's the other thing. If you go within your first week of signing up to ClassPass, again, you're markedly more likely to jump on ClassPass long term. So it informs every part of the business. That's, again, one thing I'd say. If you can figure out what that credo is, wonderful. So the other key data points for us, so there's a combination of qualitative and quantitative for sure. We're a very quant business, huge, many analysts. Our CMO is a very analytical person. He works at Google self-driving car unit. We had basically a lot of the most senior people at ClassPass were from Microsoft in Microsoft strategy, and this is very data-centric. This is very quant-led. So we lead with hard numbers, but you also have to have the qualitative component as well. Sort of the surveys that we send often every single time you book a class on ClassPass, similar to Uber. As you know, you get a pop-up, you have to leave a rating and review. That's interesting data for us as well. And then we look at certainly churn, something that's really interesting as well. So what are the markers then that contribute to retention? What are the markers that contribute to higher churn? So again, is it you going to a certain genre? Is it one thing that's interesting? Your churn is significantly decreased if you book ClassPass in a market that's not your own. Makes sense.
Right.
So almost 10% of all of our bookings actually come from people who aren't based in the city they're booking. I'm from Sydney. I'm in Melbourne right now. I booked a great class at Gript in South Yarra. Shout out. I know you know those guys. What did I do? I opened my ClassPass app. Imagine Uber's global, right? There's no Grab, there's no Ola, right? There's no other ride-sharing platform. Imagine being able to open Uber and don't have to worry. It's going to translate to your local language. You can book seamlessly, no foreign exchange fees. Payment works perfectly. That is another key kind of determinant of longer-term ClassPass engagement, because I always give the example, how would you do it otherwise? Like, it's a discovery tool for you. Imagine you're in Paris, and Pete Hull from Fitstop had this exact experience. You land in Paris, you want to do a strength and conditioning class. Your hotel gym's non-existent. You don't speak a word of French. I don't think Pete speaks French. Maybe it does. Not very good. And you don't have a euro in your pocket. How would you do it? Genuinely. You remember the old days? You'd land in a city and you'd make up an address to get a 7-day free trial. Maybe that's just me. That's what I used to do. But ClassPass, it allows you to book seamlessly, translate to your local language. So Pete went and did a class in all French at this incredible strength and conditioning venue in Paris. And he just went, I would never have found it, number one. I would never have been able to separate the wheat from the chaff. He's on Google, people are advertising on there. You can't separate the good from the bad. And I would never have known how to pay for it. I never would have known how to get there. The booking platform would have been a nightmare. So that's a factor as well, booking outside. And then the other couple of sort of quick data points, we look at LTV to CAC. I'm probably getting into the nitty-gritty financials, but I think you like that. We look at, okay, so what is our cost of acquiring the customer versus what is their lifetime value to us? And so for us, historically, a lot of sort of high-growth tech startups, that's sort of a 3-to-1 ratio is what you look at. So your cost of acquisition is the 1, and your lifetime value has to be 3 times that. But ClassPass now, it's sort of much higher than that as we grow and we sort of tighten the way that we acquire users. The other thing we look at for consumer behavior as well is how do consumers perform on ClassPass? How engaged are they based on the channel they originally were acquired through? I don't think many businesses do this. So if you think about this, it makes intuitive sense. If you're acquired via paid social or SEM, that's a relatively light touch. Okay, so you see an ad, this studio looks great, ClassPass looks great, sign up now, have a free month, great. Okay, I click through Facebook ad, I'm acquired, great. This is analogous, I think, to somebody at a barbecue coming up to you, you've never met them before, and saying, hey, here's my sock brand, buy some of my socks. Maybe you will, but you sort of feel a bit forced into it, you're not overly wedded to it. Compared to if you're referred. This is 20 to 30% historically of all ClassPass acquisitions are from referrals. It's a big number. It's a big number. And then the other, not only with the referral, think about this, you're not spending media dollars on it. You're not having to operationalize, paid specialist time to try and refine and optimize your media spend. It's all coming through the app, right? Refer a friend, we'll give you a bonus as the referrer, we'll give you a bonus as a referee. But the best thing about it is this is somebody coming up to you at a barbecue who you know, who's a mate, who says, hey, these are socks I've just created. I don't know why it's a weird sock metaphor, but you take my point. The lifetime value of them is so much higher. And just, referral as a channel, I think, is often underestimated.
It is everything. And it's just, you're right, it's underestimated, it's ignored. People spend so much on social media, lead generation. But yeah, I mean, mate, you only need, particularly in the boutique space, you can kick things off with 100, 150 members from day one. Yep. Everyone brings one friend. You're effectively full, right?
That's it.
It's pretty amazing, and I think it's a space that we as a fitness industry probably need to sharpen up a little bit.
Yep.
But yeah, having the tech capability is very, very helpful. Hi guys, hope you're enjoying the episode. Please subscribe and follow on whatever platform you're listening to. Really helps us out. Back to the episode.
But you could even, to be clear, you could do this sort of back of envelope. Could be really rough. That's fine. So you could say, you don't have to have Tableau or Looker. You don't have to have an analyst in there. But you could just say, okay, all I need to do is sort of have somebody manually track this in a spreadsheet. You can take a snapshot and then extrapolate. But your key channels are probably going to be organic, somebody who just hears about you, fine, they come direct, not referred. Referral, some sort of paid activity, probably primarily Instagram, Facebook, and SEM. And then maybe there's sort of some reactivations as well, which is interesting, like the life cycle called lead generation. Maybe you've submitted an email and then you're part of that nurturing process and you're getting SMSs and emails and then you join. That's one channel as well we look at. And then reactivations for us as well is a big channel. You know, it might be, we gain 20% roughly of all our activations. Somebody who was on ClassPass 6 months ago, we send them some comms, we get them back and engaged and get them back into a studio again. We might say, hey, you can have another couple of weeks free or a month free, come back and try us again. So again, that's sort of what do you do with your members when they're churned? Those are the main channels we look at. But you could just do this like really back of envelope. How'd they come in? Just log it down. And then in months to come, just make sure you keep a log of how many packs are they buying? How long are they staying? How many other people have they referred? You can be really scrappy with it just to give you some sort of directional steer on, again, I would be staggered, absolutely floored, if your highest lifetime value customers were not coming from referrals and direct. Somebody who's found you, and that would be word of mouth, right? Referrals and word of mouth. And then you go, I can scale back on the paid spend. It's inefficient anyway. Bidding has increased monumentally over the last year or so. Plus, is your demographic even sitting on Facebook necessarily now? Maybe, maybe not. Are they sitting searching Google? Maybe, maybe not. You can scale back your media spend. Your marketing team can focus on engaging your existing members to get the referral loop going. That's a flywheel that basically never stops. You can sell franchises off the back of it. I'm very passionate about referral, to your point, being, I think, underutilized because it's not as sexy as creating some beautiful content. We're doing this today, creating beautiful content, but it's not as sexy, if we're honest, right? It's putting that on Instagram or putting that on TikTok and trying to get people through that funnel. Marketers, a lot of them as well, can hide behind that and say, here, look at what I'm doing. I'm creating this. Here's my CPL. How many marketers then are on the hook to actually ladder up that initial CPL to the bottom line of the business? How many? Very few.
It's basically just here's a report and well, we did okay this month type thing.
But it's the first step. It's here was my CAC and here's how many leads. Fine. What about 6 months' time? What actually happened to them and how did they meaningfully contribute to my business? You as a business operator, you're worried about your EBITDA. You're worried about your bottom line. You're worried about what is the net profit of this business. CAC means nothing, right? If you have a $1 CAC but 1% conversion, it means nothing. So I think it's sort of often a vanity metric, and thinking about those channels, there often is either it's a little bit mindless or it's a case of everyone else seems to be doing this, but it's
highly saturated.
Highly saturated as well. So yeah, anyway, that's my tandem, but big on referrals.
I guess the overall message is referral. Focus on it, get it done. And it's probably, it amazes me how many operators don't have a good picture of actually what's going on in their business as well. So just actually finding out exactly what's going on. Yep. Mate, let's revert back. So Pilates, going well in this space as a genre. What else? What else are we going to see that's sort of going to pop up in the industry, or what else is sort of coming through an up-and-coming brand or genre that you can see really having legs? If, let's say, for instance, I'm someone who wants to invest in a fitness business, or I'm an operator, I've been a PT for a while, and I want to get my own studio. What's what else is coming up? Where should I be putting my money and, more importantly, my time?
Pilates is certainly interesting.
Yep.
We've covered Pilates. The couple of others, so strength and conditioning generally, and I'll dig into this a bit more, that sort of functional training. So we know in Australia especially, and arguably really globally, if you include Orange Theory and F45 as the two biggest kind of boutique franchise brands in the world, like several thousand locations each, wonderful. They opened up this whole new segment of people who had never been in a boutique before, right? This was, F45 is now founded 10 years ago, Australia especially, 800 locations. So you've got millions of people. Try and find me somebody in Australia between the ages of 18 and 40 who has never been to an F45 class. Tricky to find, right? And you know this all too well. So you've got this huge, basically what they've done is blown up the top of funnel across the world for everybody. These people who've come in, what is this? Maybe my perception was group fitness is Les Mills from the 1990s, or I just go to my gym or I just walk. So they've done that. For all of us, they've done us a huge favor because this is boutique fitness. This is really cool. I've got an instructor in there. I'm high-fiving. There's the energy in there. I'm not thinking about the workout I'm doing because it's all in front of me. There's community, all of that. Wonderful. However, if you think about F45 as a concept, ultimately, at some point, it seems likely that people are going to want some progression. Any business is cyclical anyway. I love Strong. I'm not going to be on Strong for 10 years necessarily, right? And we all acknowledge that. That's fine. Same as you're not going to eat at the same restaurant every single week for 10 years straight, okay? Peaks and troughs. And so there was a huge delta between F45, you sort of say, is down here, blowing out the top of the funnel, like bubblegum hit, come in, throw some weights around, community, awesome. And then CrossFit, which is so technical, which is so difficult, which is, sport-based, it's very competitive. The perception, the optics of CrossFit, as you know as well, it's intimidating, right? You see people doing double unders, you see people doing kipping, pull-ups, you see people walking on their hands. That's scary. And everyone that you see in the CrossFit Games looks like an absolute beast. So you think about the gap in between F45, blowing out the top of funnel, and CrossFit, which is your sort of progression, it was too big a delta. So this is the sort of biggest macro trend, apart from Pilates, over the last 5 years, has been people acknowledging this, smart people. So BodyFit, Rich and Cam, two great operators as an example. FitStop, Pete Hull, a wonderful example as well. Revel, 98 Gym, Change on the Gold Coast, S30 as well, wonderful. The list could go on and on and on. They have identified this because the delta is so big. So they are getting people who either want the progression from F45, because you can't find a barbell at 99% of F45s. There are some operators who
not a real
there.
barbell, no.
No, a real barbell.
No.
And then CrossFit is intimidating. And they're also actually interestingly getting some of the CrossFitters coming down. CrossFit's up here, F45's in there, coming down and saying it was too intense. My adrenal system is too taxed. The central nervous system, I really struggle with this intensity. So I want something that's a little bit less intense and maybe not quite as technical as well. So that is sort of the other big macro trend, is people who've said, okay, I want something where there's progressive overload. I want training blocks. So BFT, for example, Cam being foremost strength and conditioning head coach for a bunch of AFL teams, training like an athlete, but not putting people into an environment where they almost inevitably are going to get injured, which if you're coming in from an F45 to a CrossFit, that's probably too big a quantum leap for you. And they're making it team-based as well. And so the FitStop as well, to shout out Pete again, but I think the genius of that is every single class he's baking in, he's almost manufacturing artificially community, because you have to spot somebody in the class, right? You have to. So it's not a case of, Ramsey, I'm here, I'm doing my squat, I'm spotting you, and we're going set for set for set. There's community sessions there as well. So I think the best operators in the space, you've got functional strength and conditioning, the programming is really considered, it's progressive, it's trained in blocks, you're sort of working on your key compound lifts, but there's a conditioning part, you're on your ski ergs, you're on your bikes, things that F45 didn't have necessarily. And then there's also the community and the team, which I think is probably the secret sauce. And that is sort of a macro trend as well. Team-based workouts, macro trend. There's a brand called The Foundry in London who I love, and a lot of their sessions are team-based. And you sort of go, okay, that doesn't sound revolutionary at all. But it's a little psychological hack there where think about the difference between saying to me, Sam, run for 10 minutes on the treadmill, or smash out a 5-minute ski, whatever it is, compared to you and me are in a team on a Saturday and we have a combined goal together. So instead of 10 minutes on the treadmill, it's let's reach 3 kilometers together on this treadmill between you and I over the next 10 minutes. And the best studios, that is the extent of the instruction. Even better, I've come there by myself. I don't know you. I have no choice but to work out. Manufacturing community. Ramsey, you're here. What are we going to do? What's the first thing we do? We say, hey, mate, how do you want to tackle this? How do you want to tackle this? You're going, mate, I'm a great runner. You're saying that to me. I'm like, I've had a few too many beers last night. I'm a bit dusty. You'll say, okay, I'm going to crack out the first 2 minutes. Then you jump on for a minute. That being baked into the workout. So FitStop do it really well. A lot of operators now are doing that on their Saturday. It's that big kind of team session, blowing out together, and then the beers are guilt-free for the rest of the weekend. But so I'd say the other big trend, strength and conditioning to fill the delta between F45 and CrossFit, making it team-based, making it progressive.
So I think, and sort of two main takeaways there. I guess one of the big success factors for studios is building community, but no one knows how to do it. And I think you've just reeled off a few ways that you can. So that was super helpful. There's something that I always look at and always think about, that regardless of where F45 are as a brand in Australia, or where they are in their life cycle, I always am so thankful that they happened. Not only because they launched my career, but they have built this incredible boutique market.
Yes.
And naturally, we are going to have so much competition come in. People are literally going to try and replicate it, try and be better. But wow, they really set they set everyone up for success, right?
Absolutely.
So, I mean, there's always this sort of underlying respect there.
Yes.
And I always talk about my experience there very proudly. Mate, so this might be a trickier question for you, but
Okay.
has anything had its day? Like, what is there anything that you can see trending downward that, again, put me in this scenario of wanting to invest in a fitness business? Is there any sort of area that you would say stay away from, or maybe that's not going in the right direction?
I talk about this, sort of swim upstream a little bit from the question rather than kind of I won't give you specific brand names or anything like that, but broadly, the best metaphor here for boutique fitness is retail. And that is, you need to be very defined about what you're delivering to the consumer in the same way a retailer does. So, are you Amazon, which is low price and fast and accessible, and let's be honest, the UX and UI of the Amazon site is not overly pretty, right? That might be your high-value, low-cost gym. Maybe you're getting sort of 80% of the value of the high-end product for 30% of the price. That becomes a commercial no-brainer for you. Are you that? Great. Serving a purpose, big market for them. Or are you Lululemon or Apple, right? Are you experiential as a retailer? Are you giving somebody something that they just cannot emulate at home if they tried as hard as they possibly could? If you're caught in the mushy middle, or that sea of sameness, lots of alliteration there, sorry, then you are going to struggle. And we're seeing this all over the world, that consolidation, people trying to be everything to everyone and being nothing to nobody because they're not the Amazon and they're not Lululemon and they're in between. That's kind of the macro trend. If you're thinking about investing into a fitness business, so look, are they either high-end, experiential, and you're getting brand centricity and you're getting every single touch point of the consumer journey thoughtfully considered, and is the actual experience delivered incredible, right? Where you go, I'm actually not price sensitive about this. I'll pay $35, $40 for the drop-in, the same way I pay $35 to $40 for an excellent pasta at a restaurant. Or are they somebody who's saying, okay, it's more about high volume and scale and a cheap price point, similar to what Planet Fitness is doing in the US and doing it incredibly well, $9 a month for your Planet Fitness membership. If you're somewhere in between, if you're kind of saying we're a pretty good experience, but we're only delivering a 70% of what Strong's doing, or we're a pretty good gym, but ultimately we're still charging double or triple the price of one of the 24/7 low-cost operators, that is when, at sort of a macro level, you're going to struggle. And I think that's a great thing for the industry. I do. I don't want people caught in the middle and unsure about where they're sitting and potentially running into problems with their business. So that's kind of the overarching feedback.
Yeah, great answer as well. You see it all the time when a struggling, say, gym will try and add a HIIT class, and then they add a sauna.
Chug a sauna in there.
And then they and they start adding these things. And you can't be everything to everyone. And yeah, mate, it's a very, very interesting point. You've answered that very well.
Without naming
it's
much
anyone.
about what you don't do as what you do.
Yep.
Right, so people conflate, biggest mistake I think we often make as kind of marketers or people with consumer-facing products, we conflate sort of more options with higher quality, meaning it is better for the consumer to have more choice. It's not. We just want to be confident that we're making the right choice.
You would no doubt meet a lot of operators, right? I mean, you're signing new studios all the time to ClassPass. I'd imagine you're going from city to city, state to state, country to country, training at all these different places and experiencing all these different studios. What are the sort of key attributes that you see in an operator or a studio as such that show a really successful business? Because you would obviously see at the back end, these businesses are busy.
Yep.
What are sort of these key attributes that show a high performing studio?
I'll talk about successful and less successful in the same answer.
Yep.
I think the single, and negativity bias here, so bear with me, but I think the single biggest mistake operators still make, and I see it all over the world, right? And you're right, trained everywhere from New York to San Francisco to Singapore, and operators, wonderful, love it. Very privileged to do so. I think the single biggest mistake people make is over-investing on CapEx, especially surrounding a fit-out, and thinking that they can smear Vaseline over the lens and that is what is going to take their business into the stratosphere. And I think the restaurant metaphor here is quite good. And that is, if you go to a restaurant and they've spent $5 million on fit-out, it's beautiful, there's travertine everywhere, there's marble, it's amazing. The service is average, and the food is average, what's your perception of that restaurant? Are you telling 100 friends about it? Are you posting on your socials? Are you leaving a Google review? Of course you're not. And the same thing applies with studio fitness. I don't care that you have a Dyson hairdryer, as much as I love Dyson hairdryers. You know, hair volume is important. Don't get me wrong. But I don't care if you got $1,000 per square meter tiles flown in from Spain. I don't care if your floor is heated. If the actual experience I'm there for, which is the fitness or wellness experience, which is instructor-led, it's human-to-human contact, if that is subpar, I'm not going to be enamored with that location. I'm not going to be effusive about it. I'm not going to wax lyrical. It is still, from London to Singapore to Sydney, the single biggest mistake. And I think people have to be really intellectually honest with themselves about it. And the question I always ask when someone says, I'm thinking about signing this lease in Hollywood or the middle of Surrey Hills or the middle of Collingwood or South Yarra, and I'm going to spend this amount on the fit out. And I say, okay, here's a thought exercise. If you could tell nobody that you're about to sign this lease in Hollywood and spend $1 million on the fit out, or about to sign this lease in South Yarra and spend $1 million on the fit out, would you do it? 9 times out of 10, there is this moment of, it is my ego talking more than my commercial acumen, and it's probably not being driven for the right reasons. The other thing as well is they're often suckling in the teat of a landlord who says, I will pay for this fit out. And I always say, well, so you often have the two options, which is pay for the fit out or have a rent-free period or some combination. The discipline of saying either pay for the fit out and have some term rent-free, or it's okay, I'll do my own fit out, but I want the 6 months or the 12 months rent-free. Think about the discipline of that, akin to VC funding and you're just growing the top line and burning cash left, right, and center versus being bootstrapped. Again, I think that's a pretty good analog. And getting carried away with fit outs and expensive equipment and change rooms and all these different accoutrements at the expense of the actual experience is, I think, oftentimes what separates the best from the worst boutique operators. I'm not saying have some bells and whistles for sure. Strong's a great example. You've got eucalyptus scented towels, the fit outs are beautiful, but you're not spending $1 million on your fit out, right? So again, to answer your question with kind of a slightly more negative spin, but this is the overarching, and I talk to my counterparts in London and the US about this all the time, and if you can reduce your capex. F45 is a great example. Often they didn't have showers, right? You had a couple of toilets. It might have cost 50 grand to fit it out, and you had some kettlebells and dumbbells in there, and that was about it. And they were printing 70% EBIT in those businesses, right? People are pulling out 800 grand a year from their F45. And I think we've fallen a little bit from that, and people have gone too far in the opposite direction. There's a lot of kind of those vanity fit outs. So that I think is the number one headline is you cannot compensate for an average or subpar actual in-person physical experience, the quality of the training, the quality of the programming, the quality of the music, everything that encompasses that, the equipment, you cannot compensate for that with a flashy fit out.
I think a lot of operators or new operators feel they need to try and compete in that space by doing the nicer fit outs.
But I think that the table stakes there, the baseline is lower than they think. Look at some of these guys. Look at something like a Zap Fitness. You walk into a Zap and the fit outs are not expensive, right? There's some economy of scale legs. They've got hundreds, fine. But you look into it and go, it feels premium enough for you, right? And they're charging half the price of some of the other operators. So then it becomes a no-brainer for you. So I think it's figuring out, sure, you can't have something that's an incredible eyesore to walk into, but where are the shortcuts you can take? Sort of ostensibly, this feels premium enough. Where are the parts of the fit out that you actually have to invest in? Is it equipment you invest in? I think the answer is almost always yes. And then you can scale back on the fittings or the tapware or the tiles. So there has to be a baseline, don't get me wrong. But I think a lot of people assume that baseline of kind of fit out quality is higher than it is.
Yeah, I mean, if you had a sliding scale or call it an order of importance, and this goes back to the community thing. Yep. Community might be number 1, 2, or 3 right up the top. Fit out would be very, very low.
Yes.
I would suggest. Maybe there's those very, very high-end markets that require it, but yeah. I mean, you see some of the most successful studios are just roller doors. Basically no fit out.
And to the point about referrals, again, you think about the flywheel. Again, how does this ladder up to your wider business strategy? Am I going to refer you because it's an absolutely beautiful venue I attended? It's fitness. I'm not an architect. I'm not saying it's not a gallery, or I'm saying, Ramsey, that you have to think about the ultimate deliverable here that's going to impact your business in the most accretive way, right? So you're somebody, you're in whatever, architecture, it is all about fit out, fine. But fitness, like the ultimate deliverable here is the community, is the actual experience, is the equipment, is people remember how you made them feel. No, read Google reviews, read ClassPass reviews, and tell me how many people say, I'm so happy that the ceilings were vaulted and 10 meters high. No, they say, that instructor was great. I love that. I felt amazing after the workout. I'm telling my friends I got this doper hit. So again, it's really thinking about what are the inputs needed to get the ultimate output here, and it's mostly the experience in the community.
Is there, and I love that you've got access to this information, and I wonder if there's a quick answer here, but is there, let's say your top 10 ClassPass performing studios, top 10 in the world, is there something that they all do that makes them top performing? Is there some sort of, relationship between what they're doing that makes them highly profitable and packed, and their class utilizations at, high 90s? Yeah.
Great question. Great question. Couple of things. Number one, as much as we like to think we're masters of the universe and we have these incredible business strategies, we've built this great brand, we've got this great programming, let's be honest, in a bricks and mortar fitness business, your site is crucial. Okay? So that's number one. You have to be signing the right leases for the right price in the right locations. You have to get footfall there, or maybe they're destinational and you're paying much cheaper rent. That's one thing. And the other sort of overarching theme here is they're customer obsessed and they're thinking about every single touch point. So a lot of people say, marketing, right? Marketing is advertising to some people. Absolutely, it's not, right? Marketing is my content that I'm putting out. Absolutely, it's not. It is that, and it's everything else. Seth Godin says everything is marketing. And that is a huge commonality here with these incredible fitness brands all over the world, is they think about every single touch point as marketing. That is, how are you talking to somebody in person in that studio? Obviously, what do your socials look like? What your emails look like? Wonderful. But what is your customer service like? What happens when somebody can't make class and they call to cancel? What do you do with that potential fee that you're going to hit them with? So thinking about every single touch point, if you're interacting with a consumer, how can you make that a wonderful experience? And it's quite famous, actually. Brian Chesky, in the early days at Airbnb, he has this thought exercise, which I love, and I know Reid Hopper from LinkedIn uses this a lot. What would an 11-star experience look like? What would an 11-star experience look like? It's a thought exercise, of course, and it just gets you kind of thinking this orthogonal way. You're zigging, everyone else is zagging. You go, okay, 11 stars. So in Airbnb, what would 11 stars be? So you land, it's a private jet, you land, and you're greeted by a marching band, and there's a local celebrity who takes you out, and they've got restaurant bookings at the best place in town. Like, he thinks about it like that, and that's, again, a lot of these thought processes of these fitness businesses is, if I could shoot for the moon, where would I get to? And then they can try and sort of land in the stars. What little nuggets of that can I take? Again, the one other point as well, I would say, in fitness, they also look to other industries. We can be very myopic in fitness, I think. We can think it's a zero-sum game. We can think that rising tide doesn't lift all boats, and you've got a yoga studio around here, I run a yoga studio. My first thought is I need to mystery shop that yoga studio. Or it's zero-sum game and we're competitive and oh my God, I'm going to lose some members to them. The best operators we see around the world are influenced by other industries as well. It shades of the AFL. I remember working at the AFL, and the AFL would say, anyone listening to the AFL, it's like candidly what it's like still. We're the biggest sport in Australia by double, and that was it. And I was going, well, after moving into tech, I realized as an operation, as an administration, they were probably 15 to 20 years behind working in technology, but they weren't. They were patting themselves on the back and saying, oh, look at rugby union's a basket case and soccer's a basket case. I think the same thing in fitness. If you look at only what's in your industry and you tether yourself to that and you're saying we're the best of the best, great, that's wonderful. But what can you learn from technology? What can you learn from manufacturing? What can you learn from business consulting? The list, even hospitality. I find retail for fitness, I've talked about it a lot, retail and F&B, really inspirational for a lot of these partners that we see who say, I got that idea from a restaurant, I got that idea from a retail experience, from a Sephora or a Lululemon. So look outside your industry, number one, definitely. And also, just be conscious of the human experience that you have in those venues. That's a few of the commonalities between them.
Yeah, nice, mate. It's a really good point, and it's interesting you mentioned sort of looking at other industries. We're right now we're running a campaign. It's basically swap a pack, and I saw LSKD launched in Melbourne at Chadstone there, and they had this great promotion where people could come in and bring an old pair of shorts and they'd swap it for a new pair. And I just thought, geez, that's incredible. And obviously, Strong's consumer is is, I mean, one portion of it would be people who do Pilates and want a little bit more. And then, there's sort of other markets we dabble in. But we did this promotion where you can swap your Pilates pack for a strong pack for free. It's been controversial and turned some heads.
Ruffle some feathers. Yep.
I think, we've probably had half a dozen angry Pilates studio owners, but, it's a kind of, it's nice. It's nice to be different, and we're sort of expecting that. But, mate, it's a really nice takeaway to, I guess, focus on other businesses around you in other industries. What's the old saying? Focus on your customer, not your competitor.
Love that.
Yeah. I wouldn't mind chatting a little bit about the online versus in studio experience.
Let's do it.
It's been a really interesting few years. I remember, 2020, 2021, even everyone's saying fitness apps are in, online's going to blow up. At home training, this is it now. Gyms are screwed, and ironically, it's kind of backflipped. You look at
Peloton share price.
Peloton. I know it's going to be my
Yep.
first example.
Yep.
Planet Fitness share prices.
Oh, yeah.
Even Exponential as a boutique operator, I think their shares are doing quite well now as well.
The most downloaded app in all the US health and wellness app store for the last year has been the Planet Fitness app. The utility of that app is to sign up for Planet Fitness. That's outstripping any of these digital first video on demand apps. So it's a good proxy.
What is it? The free pizza or? Mate, let's talk about that. I mean, is that something that you saw coming? Did you kind of jump on the online bandwagon and think, we might be a little bit screwed here, or we have to differentiate our offering, or what were you thinking? Call it 2020 onwards.
Very nerve-wracking time. We were at a juncture at ClassPass early 2020 where we actually had a historical online product we'd built. ClassPass Go, we had this years ago. We had a studio leased in Brooklyn. We filmed all this beautiful video on demand content. So this was like 2017. We were sort of ahead of this and thought this should be, we integrated with a heart rate monitor. We thought this is going to be game changing for our business. We ended up shuttering it after about a year. It didn't do so well. But COVID hit, and we realized we had this kind of phoenix from the ashes moment. We had all this content sitting there. We had the tech infrastructure built. Wonderful. So we were able to light that up. We were able to give studios a chance to list their classes on ClassPass's live streams as well and get some revenue from us. Wonderful. We tried to help as much as we could. But the juncture was, and it was really worrying at the time, was, okay, so do we double down on digital? Do we reinvest? Do we re-up this? Do we completely change the course of this ship? Or do we try and ride this out? Do we try and conserve as much OPEX as we possibly can, as much cash in the bank? And do we retain the courage and our conviction that we will see a bounce back in in-person experiences? And I'm so fortunate we went with the latter. And Fritz, our brilliant CEO, just said he couldn't see a world where just because people can cook at home, this year online, in person versus online. Cooking at home is your video on demand, you're doing your yoga online. Cooking at home, you can cook, I'm sure you could cook a pretty good meal at home. Is that going to preclude you from going to a restaurant when restaurants reopen? Of course it's not. Arguably, it actually makes you more likely to go because you've got that way in. So this is at home is cooking, and that's your on demand. And then you've got the restaurant, which is the incredible in-person experience where you're surrounded by other people. The quality is through the roof. You could never emulate it at home. So the biggest issue with digital still, even the way you framed the question, was verse. Digital versus in-person. I think it's a false binary. They're not mutually exclusive. It's not one or the other. We can hold two thoughts in our head at once. So we had huge conviction that people would want connection and experience and to come back in person. We thought there'd be revenge working out. Look at Melbourne. They talk about, revenge spending, revenge drinking, because you had this period where it was dark. You were locked down for a long, long time. And thank goodness we stayed the course. We tried to help our partners as much as possible, prop them up with guarantees of revenue, et cetera, et cetera. But I think digital now, the place where it's got to is the minute the world opened up, the data we saw, the minute fitness opened up in person, digital engagement cratered, fell off a cliff. It went from 100% of the booking volume down to 1% and now next to nothing. However, digital has its place. I just think the biggest issue is it's not a binary there. It can be one or the other. Digital, the great thing about digital is gym intimidation, to use that really naff term, is still prevalent. right? As much as we've gone to the gym probably 15, 20 years, there is a whole tranche of people, millions and millions in Australia alone. The notion of the gym is petrifying to them. So there is no barrier to entry. If you're at home streaming on demand digitally, you can work out in the comfort of your own home. You can build some fitness there. And at some point, digital could be that way into the in-person experience. Okay, so it's kind of almost like a increasing or blowing out the top of your funnel because there is no intimidation aspect to digital. That is potentially the best use case for digital for an in-person operator. And the other thing we're seeing as well, they're not mutually exclusive. People do both as well. So you might have your Peloton at home. Does that mean that you're not going to do a Soul Cycle class when you want that incredible experience? The answer is no. The most interesting data point for us, why people say, I now go to in-person fitness more than digital by far, it's a few things. Community, obviously, surrounded by other people, wonderful. It is the caliber of the instructor. People say they push themselves something like 30 to 40% harder is their perception when they've got an instructor there. I think that makes a ton of psychological sense. And then the equipment is another big part of this. So the parts of this ecosystem where digital relative to in-person has actually performed relatively strongly, it is those genres where the delta between the digital experience and the in-person experience is not so big to justify the extra expense. So yoga is a good example. And you look at someone like a yoga movement in Singapore and what Pete and Alicia have done, the experience in person is so incredible where you say, I am going to pay $30 to drop in, it's wonderful. But even their digital experience, they've also made incredible. They cap the amount of people in the class, wonderful caliber of instructors. But outside of yoga movement, they are the outlier, they're the exception, not the rule. Think about it, yoga mat you can get for $10, roll it out next to your bed. Barrier to entry is pretty much nothing, and you can do your yoga, and you're getting a similar workout. Whereas in-person yoga, to then you can get that for free, like Yoga with Ariane on YouTube, wonderful channel, free, literally. Going to pay $35 for your yoga class, that has to be orders of magnitude better as an experience. The fit out is not expensive. The yoga mats, it's just a piece of rubber, pretty much the same thing you get. So yoga studios have to be thinking more like yoga movement, building a brand around it. The studios have done really well in person are the studios where you just can't emulate that at home. Strong is a prime example. Mate, I'm not going to have a Megaformer in my home, taking away your proprietary technology, Megaformer and rower and bike erg, but even Megaformer alone, or rowing machine alone, or bike alone, how many people are going to do that? You live in an apartment, you're in Hong Kong or Singapore, you're going to be sweating all over your floor on a rowing machine? Or no? The answer is no. And then you come in, you have this experience, and it is, again, orders of magnitude better than a digital experience. So I would say restaurant metaphor, just because you cook at home, which is your digital workout, does not preclude you from going to a restaurant. Digital can, I think, be interesting as a sort of way in to get people moving who maybe would be intimidated to move. They get to a certain level of fitness or competence, and then they come into your studio. That's wonderful. And the brands who are going to struggle a little bit more and maybe have their lunch eaten a tiny bit by digital are those brands where the gulf between the digital and the digital experience and the in-person experience, it's not huge. It's not this kind of chasm. It's actually not so different. If you're that type of brand, it's a bit trickier. If you're doing something with incredible instructors and lights and music and great equipment in person, you can't do that at home. You're going to be fine.
Mate, this is probably the perfect segue to go into my closing question. This is something that I want to ask everyone in the podcast. What does the future of the fitness industry look like to you? And is it online and in studio working together in harmony? Is tech going to play a bigger part? What's the future look like to you? I mean, you're probably pretty well placed to recognize trends. Give it to me.
One I'll reel off a few. So one I'll give you is certainly the contribution that your physical health has on your mental health. And you think about the added awareness around the importance of mental health over the last 2 years. We've just been absolutely battered. We've spent more time at home than ever. We have been in our own heads. We haven't had that physical connection. So that is just a huge tailwind, right? Even seeing we have a corporate wellness business as well, seeing that is the single most referenced term from any HR lead. Doesn't matter if we work with Google, Salesforce, huge companies, they're saying 75% of our employees, the number one thing they want is better mental health. They want to feel better. Mental health is a terrible term. It should be mental fitness. Health can be good or bad, right? It should be fitness. We should be getting fitter mentally. What is our mental push up? And I think the exciting thing for me generally as an industry is the way it's talked about often is there's this bifurcation between mental and physical. I don't like that. So people kind of conflate meditation or mindfulness with mental health. They say your physical is over here and your sleep is over here and your time with friends is over here and your mental health's over here. It's not. It's holistic, right? The sort of gestalt around this is all contributing to you being a better person, a more healthy person. So that's kind of as a macro trend exciting to see what are the brands that are going to not use before and after photos. I think that's one thing I'd say, that is going to be increasingly less common. It's not about aesthetics. The data that we're seeing, so 85% of our users tell us they care about how they feel more than how they look. That number was inverted 2 years ago. That number was inverted. The aesthetics, the before and after era, people are now saying they've had this time as well. We had this forced stop where we were, I don't know about you, you're having a dark day, you're researching, you're educating yourself. You've got Sam Harris is brilliant, Huberman's brilliant, all these people. We've now got this knowledge where we realize, whoa, physical and mental are inextricably linked. I know for me personally, I have my sort of playbook. If I sleep well and work out, that's 95% of the job done. And that's about how I feel. It's not about how I look in the mirror. So it's going to be, what are the brands who can detach themselves from the before and after photos and that you should be eating these macros and getting to this body fat level percentage. What consumers are actually wanting is to feel better, to feel mentally healthier, to be more alive and present at work and in their relationships, to be able to focus better. So how can we as a fitness industry parlay that insight into our programming, our messaging, our way of operating? And you even look at, an example might be Jazzercise. Jazzercise, which you might go, oh, Olivia Newton-John, let's get physical. They have thousands and thousands, that's something like 7,000 venues now in the US. They recorded record profitability last year. And this is off the back of people wanting to dance again after coming out of a lockdown. And it's off the back of the TikTokification of fitness as well. But again, Jazzercise is not about, do I have an APAC? It's not about, am I 4% body fat? It's movement and it's feeling holistically good about yourself. So that is kind of a macro trend is going to be really interesting. I think days of being really detailed, there'll always be a market for it, for sure. But before and after, and that being the sort of ultimate arbiter of the success of the business or what you look for, I think is going to become increasingly less common. I think the strength and conditioning will continue to surge. The one other point I make is it's so exciting that I don't believe in these markets where we have high fitness literacy, we have too much work left to do to convince the broader public that working out and prioritizing their fitness and wellness is something that's important. I really think that is sort of chapter and verse internalized by, you talk to someone on the street and say, okay, but you know you have to get healthier, how do you get healthier? They'll be able to reel it off. I need to, take in less calories than I consume, and I need to exercise and sleep, and that's about it. So that's exciting as well, to think as kind of an industry, we're not pushing things uphill, right? We're not trying to convince people of the merits of the blockchain or cryptocurrency. We're not explaining some arcane technological concepts. We actually now have a public at large who understands the value. I think for us then, it's about how can we convey the value of our fitness offerings in a way that is probably a little bit different to what we did in the past, and think about, okay, consumer wants holistic health, not just one pillar, which is fitness, and education has to be the other part of it generally. So how do we educate people that these things are not all kind of bifurcated and divergent and mutually exclusive? Like your working out and moving helps you sleep better. Your sleep helps you work out and move better. Your time in nature helps you with your sleep, which then it's this virtuous cycle, right? So I think we also as an industry, the job now is for us to show people that there's a famous study in the UK where 16 weeks of regular physical exercise in people who were sedentary beforehand was markedly better for mental health outcomes than antidepressants. Markedly better. I don't think we've done a very good job at conveying that. I still think people think of the mental fitness and the mind as somehow separate from the body. Long-winded way to say, I think that the trend at large is going to be, how can we as an industry figure that out, grow that message, and we are not going to be 8-week challenges and dropping 15 kilograms worth of body weight for too much longer.
The stat that you reeled off at the start was that 85% of people.
It's about how they feel.
How they feel, not how they look.
Yep.
That is mind blowing, and yeah, mate, that is incredible insight. I think that's a huge opportunity in itself, right?
Yep.
But I mean, it really has just flipped, hasn't it? Yeah, incredible. Sam, thank you very much. Thanks for coming on, episode 1. Really appreciate it, mate.
No worries, mate. Lovely to chat.